Hi, I'm Davy Ward Erickson,
And I'm Elena Salks.
and you are listening to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education. Elena and I are bringing you over 27 years of combined expertise in the field of holistic sexual wellness to help you integrate your body, mind, spirit, and sex.
New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so make sure to like and subscribe on all your favorite listening platforms. And make sure you follow Holistic Sexology Institute on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for your daily dose of Sex is Medicine. Now let's get started.
Hello and welcome. I am Davy Ward Erickson,
And I am Elena Salks.
and you are listening to Sex is Medicine REBOOT, your number one resource for holistic sex education. Sex is Medicine is the only podcast that uses our combined 27 years of expertise to bring you the most cutting edge and accurate information about holistic sexual wellness. Welcome to today's episode. We are so delighted to be back with you today. We hope you all had a wonderful week this past week. And we're excited about diving into today's episode. So, last episode we shared that we would be addressing hot topics for the first few minutes of every show. And this week, this episode, the entire episode addresses a hot topic. The entire episode addresses a hot topic. But before we get started, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and make sure that you've liked and subscribed to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you happen to be listening. And if you haven't seen us over at our YouTube channel at Holistic Sexology Institute, I'm going to invite you to go on over there so you can see how glorious and gorgeous Elena is, how glorious and gorgeous and Davy is, and our wonderful backgrounds. And again, once again, today we are in the Erickson boudoir where the magic happens. So join us over on YouTube, and again, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Yeah. All right. So today's episode, we are going to bring evidence to expose the lie of the origins of orgasmic meditation. So if y'all have never heard of orgasmic meditation, I'm going to go ahead and invite you to Google it. Orgasmic meditation is a sexual pleasure technique that was appropriated by Nicole Daedone. And we're going to tell you how it was appropriated and where it actually comes from, and rebranded as orgasmic meditation. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal back in like 2000, I'd say from like 2010, big deal, 2013, 14, 15. And then the shit started hitting the fan around 2018. And if y'all haven't watched the Netflix documentary Orgasm Inc. yet, I highly recommend that you watch Orgasm Inc. In spite of the lawsuit, it is accurate. It contains video footage from their videographer, behind the scenes video footage that was never released publicly. It's released on Netflix, and it paints a very dark and accurate picture of the functioning of the organization OneTaste that was established and led by Nicole Daedone. And you want to say something, Elena? Go ahead.
Yeah, and Davey, just you mentioned that this was all surrounding orgasmic meditation. But I'm wondering what is orgasmic meditation exactly? Like, what would they actually do?
Yeah, so orgasmic meditation is a practice that was appropriated from the technique of deliberate orgasm. So deliberate orgasm is a method that was cultivated by a group called Morehouse University in like late 70s, early 80s. And it consists of a woman. The focus is typically was traditionally in deliberate orgasm was the focus was on the woman, and it is a method for stroking the woman's clitoris to cultivate sexual pleasure for extended periods of time. So that's what deliberate orgasm. It includes you know, I spent some time at with a group called the Welcome Consensus, which is also where Nicole Daedone studied, stole this method from. Essentially, she lived with these people, and took the method from them, and then rebranded it as Om. But there's a lot of like context that goes around deliberate orgasm. Like, yes, there's a technique, and the technique can be replicated and taught, but the ideology of deliberate orgasm, like it's a whole what do I want to culture. It's a whole culture. It's a whole culture of deliberate orgasm. And it's interesting because in watching the Orgasm Inc. documentary, and then reading the recent trial transcripts, it's interesting that Nicole Daedone didn't just appropriate the technique, she also appropriated the entire culture surrounding deliberate orgasm, or many aspects of the culture surrounding deliberate orgasm. So I was introduced to deliberate orgasm in 2013 through this podcast, Sex is Medicine. I think at the time it was called Better Love and Sex. And there was an author Steve Bodansky, who sent me a book and reached out and wanted to be a guest on the podcast. So back in the day, like, authors would reach out and be like, hey, I'd love to be a guest on your podcast, can I send you this book? So that's what he did, and I was like, sure, I'll read this book. And the book was Extended Massive Orgasm. That's what it was. And it's the book, and it's a great book. It's a great book. If you want to learn more about the deliberate orgasm technique, it's a great book to read about it. So Extended Massive Orgasm. And so again, this was 2013, 2014. And so I had been in the field of sexology since late 2008 is when I taught my first class, but like, let's say fully established 2009 onwards. So I had heard of this technique called orgasmic meditation, throughout. And what really stood out to me about this orgasmic meditation technique, and this is why we're doing this episode today, because I'm fucking outraged. I'm outraged. And I have been for a while, right? So it's time to finally talk about this. When I first heard about this orgasmic meditation technique, it was at the same time that I was bringing out into the field of sexology the Tibetan 5-element sexual healing methods. And so it was, when we were bringing this out again, late 2008, 2009, 2010, eventually we brought it to Canada in 2011. And it was revolutionary. We had lineage permission to publicly teach authentic Tibetan sex methods. Like our Lama, taught these methods. My mentor and I trained in these methods under the guidance and umbrella of, this lineage and this tradition, with the guidance of our Lama, with his blessings and permission. And we experienced tremendous healing results, and he gave us his blessing and permission to start teaching them in small, like, workshop settings on Kauai. And then eventually, based on the positive results, he gave us permission to take this public, essentially, to bring it out into the world. And it was the first and only time these legitimately, like, I'm not blowing smoke up your
No.
wahoo, right? Legitimately authentic tantric sexual healing methods that are thousands of years old, to teach them publicly, to support the general public in learning these authentic tantric methods for harnessing human sexual energy and using it for healing and transformation. How, the deep devotion that I have to my spiritual yoga practice, right? So this is no joke to me. Like, I don't play about my spiritual practice, right? I'm not gonna lie to you about my practice. I mean, that's insane to me. So we were just busting it out onto the field with this revolutionary new stuff that was authentically a Tibetan tantric sex method. That it legitimately is. So at the same time, I'm seeing this white woman out in the field talking about orgasmic meditation. And I was like, oh, wow. But what really piqued my interest was that she said publicly for years, and we're about to show you evidence of her words, said publicly for years that Om, she learned Om, she was initiated into Om by a Tibetan Buddhist monk, and Om was a secret Tibetan sex technique for realizing enlightenment. That is how she sold you Om. That is how, remember that? Do you remember that?
I remember that. Yeah, very clearly.
Yes. And I remember in 2012, 2013 in Vancouver, I had already been teaching Tantra in Vancouver at that time, and a whole bunch of our Tantra students, so they had learned the Tibetan 5-element teachings. They went to her talk, her presentation, because they were interested specifically in Tibetan sex techniques. And she sat on that stage and said that she was initiated. I don't know if she used the word initiated, but she was introduced to Om by a Tibetan Buddhist monk, had at a party that she met at a party, a Tibetan Buddhist monk that she met at a party, had introduced her to Om. And so my people, our tantrikas that we had trained, were interested in learning this method specifically because it was another secret Tibetan sex technique. That was why they were interested in learning it. So I'm going to pause and take a sip of water here. Okay, I'm back. So this is what we have been hearing, Elaine and me. Like, this is what your market, for those of you who remember when Om was initiated. Remember when it was a Tibetan Buddhist monk and secret Tibetan sex technique? You remember that? Right.
Yeah,
So
and there were giant classes where like 50 people were taking their pants off and doing Om. And
hundreds. I
yeah,
remember her saying, like, boasting, like, 300, we owned 300 people, right? So, like, huge amounts of people were being told that this was a secret Tibetan, a Buddhist sex technique that would help them realize enlightenment, that Nicole Daedone had been ordained, had been anointed queen to transmit, to bring this knowledge, to empower humanity with this secret Tibetan sex technique. She had been ordained, right? So this is the context. So then I get this book from Steve Bodansky about deliberate orgasm, and I'm reading this book, and I'm like, I think I actually called Steve, or I sent him an email. I'm like, Steve, this sounds like Om. Like, did you study with a Tibetan monk? I was so confused. I was like, did you go to Tibet? Like, what happened? And Steve's like, no, Morehouse University, blah, blah. I'm like, well, but how come this is the same thing that Om is? And he says, yeah, I know. I said, well, how come Nicole Daedone said it's a Tibetan Buddhist sex technique? And he said, I have no idea. Let's talk about deliberate orgasm. He's like, I have no idea why this woman is running around lying about where this technique come from. So then I think somehow he connected me with a welcome consensus. So then I was like, okay, I connected with a welcome consensus, and I was like, come be on my podcast because I am so confused. Can you please help me understand how deliberate orgasm became a Tibetan sex technique called Om? And so beautiful humans from Welcome Consensus, I had some stuff, but like, I just want to say to you from the Welcome Consensus, who we have had relationship with, bless you. Like, I appreciate you. I'm just going to put that there. And so they shared with me that Nicole Daedone had lived with them at the Welcome Consensus. They have a beautiful, I don't know if it's permaculture, but it's certainly like off-grid property in Northern California. They've got a beautiful eco culture that they've created there, right? And so they told me that Nicole Daedone had lived with them there, which is true. You will see it verified in court records. She had lived with them there, and she had studied in deliberate orgasm and the culture that surrounds deliberate orgasm. Because I was saying it's not just the method, there's a whole ideology that goes along with that. So she had been immersed in that. I don't know how long she lived with them, maybe a couple of years. I'm not sure. And then she decided to leave. Her and another practitioner who ended up being her co-founder in OneTaste, that's Robert Candell, left. And then also another participant, Ken Blackman, left. They're all in the Orgasm Inc. document, by the way. Left and created OneTaste and rebranded OM. Rebranded deliberate orgasm into OM. Now, here is the thing. They all knew that OM was deliberate orgasm. They all knew that they took this technique and it's deliberate orgasm, and they were rebranding it. And okay, great. Like I have, in our curriculum, we have a practice that's called orgasmic awareness practice. And that is a practice that was generated from my practicing deliberate orgasm. So like I learned deliberate orgasm and I wove it into my Tantra practice, and I added my Tantra to it. I wove it with my Tantra. I used mindfulness and breath and connection and communication. And I was like, well, this isn't deliberate orgasm. This is, Davy's evolution of orgasmic, of deliberate orgasm. And so I gave it a new name, but every single fucking time we teach it, I let everybody know the same thing I just told you. This method is an evolution of deliberate orgasm. I learned a deliberate orgasm. I worked with it. I incorporated it into my Tantra, and this is what emerged from it. So very easy. I don't have to lie. I don't have to say, well, I made this shit up, or I was divinely ordained by, the tree goddess tapped me on the head and said, go out and teach this. I didn't have to lie about it. I just said, I was introduced to this method. I incorporated it into my Tantra, and this is the result, and if you want to learn more about deliberate orgasm, go talk to these people. Right. So these people, Nicole Daedone and Robert and Ken knew where the method came from. And at some point made a deliberate choice to lie, to completely fabricate an origin story of this technique in order to market it as a meditation practice, a spiritual practice, in order to market it as some type of spiritual wellness practice. They completely fabricated the story. And I'm going to show you. Look, I brought receipts. Since I found out, I'm just going to let you know that since I found out that this person lied and told all of y'all that it was a Tibetan sex technique, and I found out the truth, I have been collecting evidence. Mm-hmm. So trust me when I tell you I have receipts. So Elena, you talk while I find my evidence, please.
Yeah, I think one of the most disturbing things about that lie is also the way that it exploits Tibetan Buddhism as well. So they took, this beautiful, complex practice, and they used it in order to legitimize their practice, and not just legitimize it, but to also, like, I don't know if exotic, they wanted to make it more exotic, right? Or they wanted to orientalize it. I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but that happens a lot. Like it's essentially a form of appropriation, right? Yes. They used the good reputation of Tibetan Buddhism as an incredible set of spiritual practices in order to legitimize and spread the one that they were providing to people. Yeah.
And you are totally correct in that Orientalism is the correct terminology. So it is racist. So I just want to point out that what Nicole Daedone did in lying about the origins of OM, aside from the fucking psychosis of lying to millions of people about your technique, it's unfathomable to me, but it's also profoundly racist. Okay. And let's put this in context. She is a tall, blonde, thin, white woman who is lying about the origins of her technique and appropriating an ancient spiritual tradition to sell a product to you. And I'm going to show you the evidence right now. I want to show you this evidence, and then we're going to go into how and why this is so fucked up, particularly in light of the fact that this woman has been indicted. Not indicted, has been convicted. Okay. So I'm going to put all these links. So if y'all are listening on Spotify, once again, I really want you to go to YouTube, because this is really where the good shit happens on YouTube. You can find this at Holistic Sexology Institute on YouTube. And we're screen sharing right now in this episode for you. And I'm showing you the evidence. These are the receipts. Yes, you better believe I've been collecting. Yes, I have. And I'm going to include all these links in here so you can see with your own eyes. So this is an excerpt from the Complex magazine. Actually, I know the author of this article, Susan Weiss. She included me in her new book. She's got a new book out. What's it called? I can't remember what it's called. I've got it over there. Subjectified by Susan Weiss. She quotes me in that for Tantra. But this article was written by her, Nicole Daedone was interviewed by her in 2016. So this article is from 2016, so a decade ago. And it says, Nicole Daedone was at a Buddhist gathering when a monk made an unusual proposition that he rubbed the upper left quadrant of her clitoris as part of a meditation ritual. It goes on to say, her first thoughts included, this guy's a little bit creepy. So he's a creepy monk. But something told her he wasn't. Maybe because he was a monk? So Daedone undressed from the waist down and spread her legs, and she says it was worth it. Something cracked open, she told a crowd at the Living Communities Serenbe Taboo weekend. I was feeling a universal connection, but I was experiencing it through a connection to another human being, a monk. She remembers realizing this is the feeling behind all the machinations of sexuality. This is why people are willing to risk their own lives and risk STIs and risk their marriages and risk their sanity. After that, she says she was suddenly going on about life with a heightened level of awareness, as if there were antennae all over her body. She could even read people's emotions in the grocery store line. To figure out what the hell was going on, Daedone consulted a Buddhist teacher who explained that she'd had an elevation in consciousness called a Kundalini opening. Do you see the Orientalism in this? And taught her more. Okay, so this Buddhist teacher taught her more about the practice of orgasmic meditation on the condition that she promoted. So what do you get from that as a reader? How does that land? And Nicole, Elena, when you read that, what does it engender to you? Do you think like for me, I'm like, oh wow, she was initiated into this technique by a monk who gave her this Kundalini experience, and then she was given more information only on the condition that she's the white woman savior. Elena is our white woman savior.
It's divine. It's divine providence.
She's divinely ordained. She's divinely ordained.
Only she has the answer.
Only she has the answer. So,
meanwhile, she was just masturbated.
It was not just that. Meanwhile, the true story, which you will see in court transcripts, because believe me when I tell you, I will include the links in the blog of this underneath this podcast. You're going to see all my receipts. This entire document that I'm screen sharing. Let me stop screen sharing with you. This entire document that I am screen sharing with you, you will see it. I'm going to include the entire document, all of my notes, and all of the links. You will see in the court transcripts that it was some dude at a party. And here's this, because I worked with the people of the Welcome Consensus. You know what they told me? They said about that whole thing, because I relayed the story, and I was like, so blah, 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 like, why, what's the true story? And they were like, yeah, so here is the true story. In Northern California, San Francisco, there was a party. This is like 2000, whatever, Nicole Daedone was at the party. A student of the Welcome Consensus who was not a Buddhist monk, who they were like, he may practice, we don't really know. Like he lived at the Welcome Consensus, saw this hot chick at a party, and offered to introduce her to deliberate orgasm. It was a student of the Welcome Consensus at a party who introduced this to Nicole Daedone. And you know what happened? The white woman had an orgasm. Oh my fucking God, stop the press. Like, I read her description. I felt like I had been split open. I was like, I've been having orgasms since I was like 11 years old. It's not that big of a fucking deal. But it's like, have you never had an orgasm before? It's not that big of a deal. He stroked her clit for 15 minutes. I'm going to ask your audience, go stroke her clit for 15 minutes. You will see a taste of God. Like, give me a fucking break. All that happened, as you said, is he masturbated her at a party, and it broke her whole world open. And I want to say, I am sorry that it took you until 2000 to have your clit stroked for 15 minutes. That says a lot about the people that you were fucking. I'm just saying that if it took you to 2000, year 2000 in your whole ass life, it took you to the year 2000 before you had someone stroke your clit for 15 minutes. I am so sorry for you, girl. So like, I am so sorry that that's the first time you had an orgasm. And like, the whole brand of Om was created essentially around the fact that a white woman had an orgasm and like saw the face of God because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oof. Oof. Yeah, I feel sorry about it as well. And I feel sorry that I mean, had she never stroked her own clitoris? No, I mean, a taste of God through orgasm doesn't just come from somebody else doing it for you. You're fully capable of working with your
Of
own body
stroking your
to
own
have those
clitoris.
experiences. Yes.
I'm like, why did you never, like, are you seriously telling me that you never had an orgasm? And I get that, but lots of women, period, have not had orgasms, right? And it's a painful thing, and there's various reasons for us not having orgasm. But let's not act like having an orgasm means that you are the savior of all women. That doesn't make you the savior of all women because you had an orgasm at a party. But the thing for me that really, chokes my chain or whatever it is, whatever the terminology is that she then took that experience and lied to all of you. So I just showed you one example. Let me go ahead and screen share. I'm going to go ahead and screen share you the multitude of examples that I have here. You get to see my beautiful screen. Okay, so we'll get up to all of that. So multiple documented lies about Om being a Buddhist sex technique. That is where we are. So we're the excerpt complex, the excerpt from Complex, the complex excerpt, the excerpt from Complex magazine. And my note, this entire story is a complete and total fabrication. Completely fabricating a story of this magnitude to lend legitimacy to a technique that was ripped off from Welcome Consensus is revolting. It's revolting. It is plagiarism. It is a lie. Okay, so then we have in 2004 by co-founder of OneTaste, Nicole Daedone. Daedone claims she was introduced to this practice by a Buddhist monk in her 2000 TEDx talk. So I don't know why that says 2004. That's just what I copied and pasted. OneTaste was co-founded in San Francisco by Nicole Daedone and Robert Candell. Daedone stated that a Buddhist monk introduced her to orgasmic meditation before she started OneTaste, though she did not name the monk nor the lineage the monk studied under. She did say Tibetan. This is Tibetan Buddhist. This is Wikipedia, and she talks about Vajrayana Tantra. According to the story she repeats on stage and in YouTube videos, Daedone founded OneTaste in 2004 after she met a monk at a party who showed her a version of the technique she developed into Om. This is from 2018, The Dark Side of OneTaste, the Orgasmic Meditation Company by Bloomberg News. Orgasmic meditation was first introduced to Daedone by a Buddhist monk, and she began teaching the practice in 2001. New York Post, 2020, a look inside the controversial orgasmic meditation program for women. Orgasmic meditation is a practice is number 6 in evidence. Orgasmic meditation is a practice that was adopted and made mainstream in 2004 by co-founder of OneTaste, Nicole Daedone. Daedone claims she was introduced to this practice by a Buddhist monk in her 2011 TED Talks. Here, number 7, here co-founder Nicole Daedone's story of how she encountered a Buddhist monk at a party who changed her life. BBC.com audio. YouTube video 10 seconds in where she says that she met a monk. She qualifies it over and over and over again that she met a monk at a party who introduced her to this technique to give it an air of spiritual validity and spiritual authority that it did not have. So why is this important? It is important because the entire defense, so Nicole Daedone was on trial May through June. She has been convicted of abuse. The entire defense of this trial by Nicole and her co-conspirator has been all of these people consented. They all consented. They were in full consent. Guess what, Nicole Daedone? You cannot consent to a lie. A lie robs you of the ability to consent. You cannot consent to a lie. So all of you in my audience, all of you women who went to workshops and took your pants off and exposed your genitals to some weird dude in the room that you didn't know, who overrode your own boundaries, particularly those of us who have experienced sexual trauma. And our whole body may have been screaming no. Or maybe we just had a niggle. Or maybe we were just uncomfortable. But we overrode our own bodies and our own intuition and spread our legs at the invitation of Nicole Daedone because we trusted her when she told us that this was an authentic Buddhist sex technique. And she had been ordained to deliver this method to all of us women, to empower us. When you, as a participant, overrode any degree of discomfort to let somebody stroke your clitoris in a public setting because you trusted and believed the lie that Nicole Daedone told you that she had been ordained. It's in the article I showed you. She had been ordained by a Buddhist monk and a Buddhist teacher to introduce you into this for your spiritual well-being. You were not in consent. You were not in consent, and that is abuse. It is psychological, spiritual, and sexual abuse to lie to somebody, to deliberately deceive and manipulate them about the origins of this method, to encourage them to override their own intuition and potentially expose themselves to harm because you as the receiver believed that this was an authentic, spiritually transmitted technique, and you trusted the guru who had been ordained to transmit this method to you. Does that make sense? You following me? You were not in consent. You cannot consent to a lie. That is sexual abuse. That is the same thing as your partner saying he's wearing a condom and he's not. That is the same thing as somebody lying to you about their STI status. That is the same thing as if Elena and I had been lying to you for the past decade about the fact that our Lama gave us permission to teach. My Lama lives in my house. That's how authentic our fucking practice is. My Lama lives in my house. He has told you on video that he has given us permission to do this, right? That would be like, imagine how betrayed you would be. All of you who have trained with us, all of you who had listened to me on Sex is Medicine, all of you. At one point, I don't know if this is true, but at one point, like I was getting numbers like 300,000 subscribers. Imagine if 300,000 people had believed me this whole time when I was telling you about the Tibetan 5 elements, and you believed me and you trained with me and you invested $20,000 fucking dollars in my certification program. And then you found out that I fabricated. I made all of that shit up to sell you a product. I think y'all have rights for a class action lawsuit. I'm just saying, like, not only, convicted, she's going to jail. Her brand lied to you about the origins of this method and exposed you to potential harm and exposed you to trauma. They market orgasmic meditation as a sexual healing method, as a method to heal sexual trauma. That is that's on their website. That's in their marketing materials. It's a technique to empower women and heal sexual trauma. You cannot heal sexual trauma if you are being lied to. Lies are abuse. I studied abuse. I'm an abuse survivor. I am an abuse thriver. I have 50 hours of training in domestic violence. Lying is a form of psychological, spiritual, emotional, and sexual abuse. And when you lie to people about sexuality, that is sexual abuse. You cannot heal trauma when you are being abused. I'm horrified. I'm horrified. And the fact that this person who has lied to you since 2000, when the fuck ever, for as long as I've been in the fucking business, 17 years, you have been being lied to. And the only reason she's telling the truth now is because there was a federal indictment and she had to be on trial. I'm fierce about it because this is not okay. I want to cry because it is abuse. That is abuse. That is abuse. And we deserve better than to be abused by our leaders. We deserve better than to be abused by these fucking sexual wellness companies. You deserve it better. You deserve the truth. Why would you just not tell the truth? So I'm going to tell you why they won't tell the truth. So I'm going to include the link to her trial, stuff in here if you aren't updated about the OneTaste trial. But I'm also going to let you know that I interacted. So OneTaste has rebranded to the Eros platform. And the OneTaste company was bought by several millennial people. And I feel sorry for you that you bought a company that is fraudulent. It's fraud. Like, the origins of this method were fraudulently presented. That's just a fact. And I'm sorry that that's the case, but it's fucking true. So when I confronted Eli Block, who is the new CEO of OneTaste, about the lie, I'm going to show you a screenshot of what he told me. He didn't deny that Nicole Daedone lied. I'm going to show you what he told me. So, Elena, will you talk while I find the screenshot, please?
Sure. Yeah. Oh gosh,
why is this so bad?
What you're talking about.
Why is it so bad?
Why is it so bad? Why is it so bad? Yeah. Oh my gosh. So she's telling everyone that this is a Tibetan Buddhist practice. I wonder how many of those people would have gone forward with the practice had they actually known? Like if she just said, I learned this, I went and I lived with these people and they taught me this technique and I'm going to teach you, how many people would have actually felt comfortable going to those workshops, taking off their pants, deciding to do it with a stranger? And it's not to say that there's never, consensual ways to explore your sexuality, even sometimes in a group setting, but you have to have full knowledge of why you're doing it, and you have to be fully prepped. Conversations about consent and agreements and boundaries need to be had. And like, as you said, if it's all based on a lie, how can there be any consent?
And I love that you said that, because in the Orgasm Inc. documentary, which I'm going to invite you all to go to Netflix, go wherever you have to go, watch this documentary, because you are going to see the lies and the gaslighting. Gaslighting is psychological abuse. Again,
Mhm.
look it up. Domestic violence awareness. Gaslighting is psychological abuse. You will see her gaslighting people in real time. So in that documentary, I remember there being a workshop setting, and to your point of conversations and consent and setting things up, I remember them filming a dynamic between one of the lead strokers, one of the lead teachers, Nicole Daydon, and there being a conversation about safety and ethics and boundary, and
I
her
remember that.
gaslighting him about it.
Mhm.
So that's the thing. The gaslighting, the overriding, the psychological manipulation that went in to to ohm as a product in order to keep it on the market. But again, how many times? So people like this dynamic demonstrates how there were people that were attuning to, like, wait a minute, boundaries, and wait a minute, safety, and how she gaslit them into overriding their intuitive knowing.
Yeah, and that's another part of the abuse of the spiritual aspect of it too, right? Because she framed it as this Tibetan Buddhist practice and gave it this spiritual overtone, she was also able to say, if you don't experience it the way I experience it, something's wrong with you. You're not evolved
And that is
as
all
well.
over, the trial, that the trial transcripts, and that is again what they continue to say this day. The one of the defense says, in one of the articles, one of the defense lawyers say, these women were having the time of their life, and now they just have, now that they're married with children, they have regrets about their sexual freedom that they experienced when they were younger. So again, they're gaslighting you, they're darvoing, they're like, oh, you just feel shame now because you were so sexually liberated then, and now you're conservative, so this whole trial is just about you having regret. They actually say that it's a trial based on regrets of sexual exploitations in their youth. But they believed that Nicole Daydon was a guru who was ordained by a Buddhist teacher to bring this secret sex technique, the secret Buddhist sex technique, out into the world. And so she manipulated them into giving away their power. That is abuse. You cannot consent to a lie. So none of these women, none of these men, none of those people who functioned and worked in that organization were in full consent. You cannot consent to a lie, because, to your point, had they known the truth, had had they, I know somebody a woman who went back in 2014. She went to a big Om thing, and she was like, this was totally out of her comfort zone. She was like, I am really, like, I'm like in this room and I'm like, ew, am I really going to do this? And she's like, some creepy dude walks up to me and like, like, ah, but she overrode all, and she's a sexual abuse trauma survivor. She overrode all of her intuitive and instinctual boundaries, because she said, but you know what? Nicole is a guru. Nicole, I wanted to experience. She wanted to experience this Buddhist sex technique. So she overrode all of her own wisdom, the wisdom of her body. She overrode it because she believed something that was a lie. So all of you who were in that organization And all of you who were abused and harmed in that organization, you were not in consent. And I know that you know that, but this is another layer of it. You were not in consent. And you were not in consent to begin with because the origin story of Om has been fraudulent. It has been a lie. So I'm going to show you. Oh, sorry, go on, Elena. Go.
Yeah, and just this is a slight diversion, but while we're on it, anytime, people listening to this podcast are going to be people who are wanting to learn about sex or open to sex. And we're identifying key abuses that happen regularly in these spaces. So if anyone tells you that you're not enlightened enough because you don't like something, that's a huge red flag. If anyone's teaching you things that require you to give your power away to someone else rather than teaching you to empower yourself, that's a huge red flag. And so we were just talking about those 2 points. So I wanted to just frame that as well for the future too, because Nicole, Daedone, and OneTaste are not the last people to do this. There will be more in the future.
And there currently are massive, and you bring massive amounts of abuse and fraud. And you bring up such a good point, Elena. I really just want to drill down into that again. If you are working with a teacher who tells you that your desire to not engage in a sexual activity particularly means that you are unenlightened, or you're just stuck in your trauma, or whatever gaslighting and psychological manipulation they try to push you into, run. Because they are not trauma informed. They do not have your best interest, and they are encouraging you to override your own inner wisdom as opposed to connect with it. So I'm going to give you an example. When Elena and I have been certifying practitioners for 10 years, and there is a component, there's a module in our training program in which we're all in person and in which sexual healing methods are performed. We have been diligent about ensuring consent. We have people write in writing that they consent. We jump through hoops to pair people to make sure this, that, and the other. And not everybody can get paired because not everybody gets to, not everybody wants to. And some person doesn't want to work with this person. And we have to respect confidentiality, and everything's got to be anonymous and all that shit. So we spend hours on this. And one thing we always say is you can opt out. We've had practitioners graduate from our training program who have opted out from being in the room watching a sexual healing demonstration because it didn't feel right in their body. Mm-hmm. Because you know what? We are trauma informed, and I trust the wisdom of your body. And I trust it even if you don't. And I'm going to validate it. You don't have to give me a reason. If you don't want to be in that room, you just don't want to be in the fucking room. Or you don't want to receive a yoni. Good. Then don't receive a yoni massage. You don't want to receive a lingam massage. You don't want to receive from this person. You do want to receive from this person. Like, any sexual healing method is about dissolving the blocks for you to be able to hear, sense, see, and feel your own wisdom of your own body, because your body doesn't lie. And when sexuality teachers particularly encourage you to override the wisdom of your own body, that inflames me more than anything, because that is the whole point of sexual healing, is for you to trust your body no matter what. No matter what, because that's the healing. You were born trusting your body, and then through the trauma we experience, we're traumatized away. We learn to distrust our body, right? And that's suffering. So sexual healing is about reclaiming our relationship with the goodness of the body and the messages of the body as wisdom. And any guru who teaches you to override the wisdom of your own body is not a guru. They are a demon. They are a demon. That is not okay. Okay, so that's my soapbox. Because I want you guys to know this. I want you to know the attitude of the people that you're giving money to. So when Eli Block was confronted, and I'm just going to say here, like all of what I'm saying is true, and all of what I'm saying has receipts, right? So all of this is evidence. So none of this can be defamatory because all of this is truth. There's receipts, there's evidence. These are your own words that I am showing. Your own words that I am showing you. So here we go. I'm a screen share. Do 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 do. I've got to get the window so I can actually like screen share at the same time.
While you're doing that, I'll also just elaborate on, the wisdom of the body and your connection to the body is also necessary for expansion into pleasure. Like the more that you cut yourself off from that, the less you're going to experience the joy and beauty of sex. All right, you got it up.
Tell it, Elena. All right, so this is Eli Block. You can see his name there, and you can see him responding to my statement about the lie. He says, David Ward Erickson, regarding Nicole's story, tell me you haven't spoken too much press without telling me you haven't spoken too much press. The story is complex, and she tells it mostly the same, but people get it all kinds of weird. It's not going to change your mind, but I will tell you that trying to get through an interview with somebody who barely understands the practice anyways, whilst trying to split the hairs of, well, there was this thing called doing, which is actually what we did, but that doesn't have a container, and the emphasis is more on sexual commerce. But I had a meditation background and thought the basic technique was great, but it needed a lot of modification to work for a woman's body, blah, 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 blah. It's a great piece for sure, but after 100 interviews, you don't want to go through it all anymore. But you wouldn't know that because you're a jealous woman who knew Nicole has effortlessly in her pinky what you do your daily juice routine to get one drop of. So then he's insulting me for confronting him about a lie. So what stands out for me here is basically he's saying, he doesn't say, no, she didn't lie. He's not discounting the lie. He's saying, well, she actually had to lie because the real story is so complex that people wouldn't really understand it. And so we had to completely fabricate an origin story in order for you, the public, to be willing to receive this technique, because if you knew the truth, you might not want to do it. What does that say to you, Elena?
That's deeply disrespectful of the public and of the journalists that the person is in front of. And it's not hard.
Exactly. So for an example, we gave you an example in the beginning of this episode. We teach a practice called orgasmic meditation. Every single
OAP.
So I'm sorry. No, delete. Orgasmic awareness practice. We teach orgasmic awareness practice, right? Every single time we teach it, individually or in a group setting, we say the orgasmic awareness practice is an evolution of deliberate orgasm. Davy learned deliberate orgasm from the book Extended Massive Orgasm and learned more with the people at the Welcome Consensus in 2014, 2015. She integrated the deliberate orgasm practice into her tantric masturbation practice, and this is what resulted. This is what's different from deliberate orgasm and orgasmic awareness practice. Number one, we meditate before we masturbate. Number two, it's a solo practice, not a partner practice. Number three, we've woven ocean breath in it to stimulate the vagus nerve and to facilitate relaxed awareness with focus. Number four, the time limit is about 20 minutes, though you can go longer. Number five, you can touch any part of your body that's pleasurable. It doesn't have to just be your clitoris. It could be your nipple. It could be your anus. It could be your big toe. Number six, the focus of the practice is about cultivating orgasmic awareness and being a witness and observing sensation in your body. Number seven, it's about observing the ebb and flow of pleasure as it arises in your body and being curious about it. Number eight, the goal is not orgasm, the goal is connection. Right? Very easy. And we don't even go through all of those. We don't every single time, but it's very easy. Yeah. Orgasmic awareness practice. If I was at the meeting, give me a microphone. I got a microphone. I'm media. Hi, I'm media. Hi, I'm Davey Ward Erickson. And I'd like to talk to you about a practice that we do, orgasmic awareness practice. This practice is an evolution of deliberate orgasm, which I learned about in the book Extended Massive Orgasm, and worked with the people at the Welcome Consensus. This is what I've done with this practice, and this is what it offers you. 30 fucking seconds.
Yeah.
Boom. That's
Yeah.
honest.
And all of our graduates can do the same thing and are tested on it as well.
Yep. So the other thing that is part of this conversation, which I don't have a screenshot for, which I regret, and it isn't there now, but Elena can attest to the fact that it was there, is when I said, okay, it's confusing, I responded to that quote we just showed you. And I'm like, well, so basically you're telling me that like Nicole Daedone believes that the public's too stupid to understand the truth. And that doesn't give her permission to lie. Lying is not okay. Like that's not a Buddhist value. And then Eli compared lying about orgasmic meditation to lying about in Nazi Germany. So he gave me an example of like, remember that response that he gave me? He's like, oh, well, you're obviously not
hiding people.
Yeah,
lying to hide people. Yeah.
You're obviously not a good Buddhist because you would know that sometimes lying is okay. And in Nazi Germany, if you were hiding Jewish people in your house and the Nazis came to the door, you would lie to them. And that is a virtuous lie. So he's trying to tell me that Nicole Daedone lying about the origins of Om was a virtuous lie. It was the equivalent of lying about having Jewish people in your house when Nazis are knocking on the door, right? That's the equivalent. That's what he was trying to say. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, the equivalency that he was making. Yeah. It's wild, and it's everything about that conversation was gaslighting you too. It was going all over the place. He was attacking you for your practice and your lineage when Nicole still talks about Vajrayana Tantra and hasn't revealed who she's learning from or who her lineage is. Yeah, it's wild.
Yes. So we are bringing this up now, because we're relaunching Sex Is Medicine, but largely because of this trial. So I want to read to you, and again, we're going to include this link below, but I want to read to you why this is so important, because the U.S. justice system is not a justice system. So let's just be real. But sometimes shit works. Sometimes abuses stop. Sometimes harm is rectified. But I want to read to you the conclusion that a jury of her peers determined by hearing all of the evidence that was presented in this case. On Monday, June 9th, 2025, after less than 2 days of deliberation, a federal jury convicted the founder and former SEO of OneTaste, Nicole Daedone, and her former head of sales, Rachel Churwitz, of forced labor conspiracy. Less than 2 days. They sat in that courtroom for 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks, heard all the evidence, took them less than 2 days to be like, look, bitch. Like, less than 2 days. After hearing 5 weeks of testimony from former employees and clients of OneTaste, based on the evidence presented, the jury determined the defendants, Nicole Daedone and Rachel Churwitz, and their co-conspirators subjected their victims, so these are their employees, other own practitioners, maybe some of you, subjected victims to economic, let's count the abuses, economic, sexual, emotional, financial, and psychological abuse, as well as surveillance, indoctrination, and intimidation. They are facing up to 20 years in prison. And I'm just going to say, judge, like, please, these women are dangerous. Nicole Daedone has a demonstrated pattern of lying, which is psychological abuse, lying to trauma survivors, lying to victims of sexual harm and violence. She has a track record of lying to them for at least 17 years. As long as I have been in the industry, I have watched this woman get on stages and lie, bald face, lie to your face about the origins of this method. And when you look at the links below this video, so like and subscribe, you will also be able to see for your own eyes her lies. And these were not misinterpretations because she's on video. In her 2011 TED Talks, this was part of her script. Any of you who have done a TED Talks, you know that you prepare for that shit for months. So for months, she practiced this lie. It didn't just slip out. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. It was intentional. It was an intentional, deliberate attempt to deceive you. And it worked until she got indicted for abuse. And that's that, folks.
Yeah. So for me, what's so important about this for our listeners, again, is just bringing it back to staying safe out there, right? Really listening and learning from these experiences, because as we said, it's happened so many times before. This is not the first time this sort of trial has happened or these sort of abuses have been exposed, and it is not the last time that it's going to happen either. And so when you're out there looking to learn from a teacher, you want to be careful and cautious and think about who is this person and what is their motivation? What do they stand to gain from me working with them? Do they empower me or do they take my power away? Do they give me the tools I need to move forward or do they hoard them? And also, are they making promises that they can't really deliver on? You know, if something sounds too good to be true or sounds too easy, it likely is. You know, most things that are worth doing take effort and they take time and they take a little bit of discipline.
And this is why sources is so important. So this is why on our website you will see our credentials and you will see our accrediting bodies and you will have links to go look us up on their websites. We're not, again, the equivalent to me of lying about the origins of OM. Imagine if we were lying about being government accredited, which some people have accused us of, like have said in Reddit threads, like, oh, they're not government accredited, they're just registered as a business. Motherfucker, we are accredited by the Ministry of Education in Canada. That is not registering your business. That is not the same as business registration. Yes, I have to be registered business in order to become accredited, but geez, it is not the same. Our curriculum has gone through and continues to go through yearly reviews. We are government accredited. I don't lie. And like that whole psychology, and I find this really, really like I will say like, don't hate me. I'm just telling you the truth. Like, hate the truth, not the messenger. In the white wellness world, like, people just lie about shit, right? And so, like, I don't lie. I'm not white. I'm not white. That doesn't mean that black people don't lie too, but I'm just like, my mind is not like how I can fuck you over and deceive you. That is not my orientation. I was a monk at the age of 23. A monk. I took vows and wore white. And that's not to say a monk can't abuse you too, but I'm just trying to give you context of like, I'm not like, it wouldn't even fucking occur to me to lie about shit that's so easily disprovable. That's so easily disprovable. Yes. Okay. All right. So that is our soapbox. That is our expose, I'm going to call it, on Nicole Daedone and the origins of OneTaste and why there was never consent for you all. There was never consent. So I'm going to make sure that you like and subscribe in all the platforms. I'm going to keep saying it until you do it. Like, subscribe, leave us a comment. What do you think about this episode? What do you think about these lies? Were you somebody who took your pants off for Nicole Daedone because you were lied to and wish you hadn't? Let us know. Leave it in the comments below. Sending you love, peace, blessings, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Sex is Medicine, your #1 resource for holistic sex education.
Make sure you like and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on all your listening platforms and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, where you can get your daily dose of Sex is Medicine videos and episode recaps. Also, make sure you register for your weekly dose of Sex is Medicine at holisticsexologyinstitute.com and send us your questions, please, at questions@holisticsexologyinstitute.com. Thank you so much for listening to Sex is Medicine.